Hello, Archie Dunlop here with Talking Astrology with Archie. And in this video, I'm going to be looking at the week starting on Monday, November the 20th, 2023. And that's the week that runs through until Sunday, November the 26th, 2023. And I will be looking at this week from the perspective of both astrology and the I Ching, though I will not be having any forecasts for the 12 signs. So the way I'm going to structure this video is I'm going to start off by looking at the general picture for the week, what I see as being the most important astrological aspects and movements. Then I'm going to talk about a few famous people who may be impacted by these movements. Not just famous people. I'm going to talk about a national chart, of course, the chart of Ukraine, because I think Mars and the Sun may be having an impact on Ukraine this week. So when I've done that, I'm going to look at the I Ching, and my I Ching reading is going to cover money and career, business, and also relationships. So let's start off by looking at the beginning of the week. So let's have a look. This is the position of the planets at midnight on November the 20th on Monday. Midnight as in the beginning of Monday. And I've set this for New York as usual. So what we have to realize about this week is that the Sun and Mars are very close to each other still. Yes, the conjunction is over its peak. The Sun, which goes faster than Mars, is moving away from Mars. But these planets, two planets, are really close, and their meanings and their symbolism are sort of merging with each other still, and we can see this in terms of these two dynamic masculine planets crashing into each other, still causing a lot of friction, a lot of scope for sort of accidents, mishaps, dangerous behavior, people being very full of themselves, having very strong opinions which they're not prepared to compromise. Now, you can see that the Sun and Mars are right at the end of Scorpio, and they're both about to move into Sagittarius. And the moment these two planets move into Sagittarius, they make a square aspect to Saturn. So this week we have Sun square Saturn, and we have Mars square Saturn. So on Wednesday, the Sun moves into Sagittarius. And so there's a sort of feeling, things have changed. The Scorpio season is over. Sun's in Sagittarius, that's great. But the moment the Sun moves into Sagittarius, it makes a square aspect to Saturn, as you can see. And likewise with Mars. On Friday, Mars moves into Sagittarius. And then on Saturday, you've got Mars square Saturn. So I was thinking that kind of this week should be a bit of a relief after all the pressure of last week with Mars opposition Uranus, and then on the 13th of November we had that new moon, which was again at the same time as the Mars Uranus opposition. So I was kind of thinking, this is going to be a bit of a relief. We're finally over the worst. But maybe not. In astrology, there are triggers. And so we have a slow-moving planet, which is Saturn. It takes a long time to move away from particular parts of the chart, particularly if it's transiting some personal planet in our horoscope, and then the Sun and Mars come along. They square Saturn, and they bring the whole thing back together. And so we do have to be careful. Although I think the Mars square Saturn is one of the worst aspects in the book. It can be quite frustrating. It can be about delay, and in extreme situations, it can be about death. I'm not predicting death or anything like that for this week, but I'm just reminding you that this is a week where the Sun and Mars make a square aspect to Saturn, and I think those two aspects they dominate the week. It could be a very frustrating week, a week where we think we're over the worst, and just at the moment we think we're over the worst, things get bad again. Normally Sun in Sagittarius would be good news, would be a relief from all that Scorpio pressure, but not in this case, because as soon as Sun goes into Sagittarius, it squares Saturn. Likewise with Mars. As soon as Mars goes into Sagittarius, it squares Saturn. So that is a problem, and those aspects, unfortunately, they dominate the week. On the plus side, at the beginning of the week, just before the Sun and Mars move out of Scorpio, they make a sextile aspect with Pluto. Now that could be quite useful, particularly at the beginning of the week. There's scope there for creating dramatic and favourable changes. I think that can definitely be done. We can use the power of our personality to change everything. So think about what you'd like to change in your life. Be realistic. Think about something that it's possible to change. Something that might in the past have been difficult. Well, now is your chance. Beginning of the week, Monday through to Wednesday is a time when I think we'll have the greatest ability to make things happen. But as you move towards the end of the week, we get these squares involving the Sun and Mars and Saturn, and really we can almost regard the Sun and Mars as a single planet, because they're in conjunctions. So this single planet, this single energy, is moving towards that square of Saturn. And I think it's on Wednesday that the Sun is aspecting the Mars-Saturn midpoint, I think by 45 degrees. And so Sun on a Mars-Saturn midpoint, is arguably where everything sort of comes together in a negative sense. Sun on the Mars-Saturn midpoint is about feelings of fear, feelings of just not being able to get things done, hesitation, perhaps thoughts about the worst possible scenario, negative thoughts, a lot of negativity there. So overall, from an astrological point of view, I'm afraid it is another difficult week, even though it seems to start well. If you're trying to create change, yes, create change, but do it while you can, is what I would suggest. as far as advice, don't get too angry about things. Don't get frustrated about things. Don't it it it's these it's something that's passing. Sun and Mars are quite fast planets, and as soon as they move away from Saturn, things will return to normal. But I don't think that's going to happen this week. I think we're going to have to wait until next week for the Sun and Mars to really move away from that square of Saturn. Okay, so what I wanted to do now was consider how all of this might be impacting different people, a few famous people. As I said last week, Joe Biden's birthday is coming up. And so Joe Biden, born on November the 20th, 1942. So the beginning of this week, Monday, Joe Biden is 81 years old. And I have looked at his chart quite a lot recently, but let's have one more look at his chart. There's his chart. You can see he's a Scorpio, got 4 planets in Scorpio. He has got his Sun at 2734 Scorpio, got very close to Venus, 2833 Scorpio. But as far as the important things in his chart is the fact that he has got his North Node at 0 Virgo. So Saturn has been conjunct his South Node. So that might have been encouraging Joe Biden to do things he shouldn't have been doing. The past is maybe catching up with Joe Biden, with Saturn on his South Node. And this week, the moment the Sun and Mars move into Sagittarius, they make a square to his South Node. They make a square to his North Node as well. They make a square to his nodal axis. And I think that could be a problem because he's already got Saturn square his nodes, and now he's going to have the Sun and Mars on there as well. So I think his contacts with the people around him are not going to be great, and maybe his past will in some respects catch up with him. There's more to it than that, though. Because as I've sort of emphasized, Joe Biden's solar return, the chart when the Sun returns to where it was when he was born, which happens every year, his solar return is dreadful. This is his solar return, actually set for the end of last week, November the 19th, because the precise moment where the Sun returns can change. I've looked at this chart. I've shown you this chart if you've been watching my videos a lot, but this will hopefully be the last time you have to see this chart. So what I found amazing about this chart is, you've got Mars, opposition Uranus, widely opposition Uranus, but Uranus is very close to the midheaven. It's angular. Mars is close to the IC. It's angular. So the Moon is also angular. So you've got the Moon on the descendant, Uranus on the midheaven. You've got Mars on the IC, and you have got the Moon on the Mars-Uranus midpoint. So that indicates a lot of violence, mishaps, and it'd be interesting to see where that manifests. Now, is that about his personal life? Is that about him falling downstairs? I don't know, maybe he'll do himself an injury falling downstairs, that kind of thing. Or is it about the solar return of the US head of state? Is this about, the American king, whoever the king is, and it doesn't matter whether or not Joe Biden is the one in control. He probably isn't in control, but the point is he is the titular head of state. And so when you have a solar return this bad, it's not just a reflection on Joe Biden, it is a reflection on the US. And so this is a difficult chart, and this is why I suggested that Joe Biden really should, step down before his birthday. Obviously, he hasn't stepped down before his birthday. Now we've got a president who's got this solar return. This is all about the US and what happens to the US and the frustrations that the US will be facing now, and the violence. I mean, already the US is involved in 2 wars indirectly. I mean, we've got the Middle East. Anything can happen. There's the war in Ukraine, where the US is actively supporting one side. So that may be how this solar return is going to work. Of course, there may be a third source of conflict. So it's a very difficult chart for the US, and I do think it's going to impact the US and not just Joe Biden. Now, you may be asking, why have I got a picture of former UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson up here? Well, the reason I've got a picture of Boris Johnson up here is because of his Mars. Let me show you his chart. There's his Mars. It's at 137 Gemini. So Boris Johnson has got Saturn at 1 Pisces squaring his Mars, and then this week the Sun and Mars, the moment they move into Sagittarius, they make an opposition to his natal Mars at a time when he's got Mars squaring, when he's got Saturn squaring his Mars. So it could be a difficult time for Boris Johnson. I don't know what might happen. I mean, it might have nothing to do with his public life. I mean, he's no longer Prime Minister. What happens to him is not necessarily going to have any impact on Britain. But he perhaps needs to be careful. He needs to sort of stay out of controversy or whatever. But maybe with Boris Johnson, there'll be things going on that make him angry. I mean, what kind of things might make Boris Johnson angry, annoy him, upset him? Well, Boris Johnson has been strongly associated with Ukraine. If one remembers, when the war started in Ukraine, there were peace talks. There were talks between Russia and Ukraine in Istanbul, in March 2022, and they came to a tentative agreement. It looked as if they could actually stop. The war could be stopped. The agreement was pretty favourable to Ukraine, at least by what in terms of what's going on now. But Boris Johnson went to Kiev just as these talks was starting. Just as after these talks, and he basically persuaded Ukraine to pull out of those talks, and we don't know. As far as I know, that's what he did. But, at least that's the story. But there was heavy pressure on Ukraine by the US and the UK to keep the war going, and as a result of that pressure, probably an extra 500,000 people died. Most of them Ukrainians. So there's Boris Johnson's Mars, 137 Gemini. And if we look at Ukraine's chart, Boris Johnson's Mars at 137 Gemini is square Ukraine's sun at 056 Virgo. And of course, that sun of the Ukraine at 056 Virgo has just had Saturn opposition it at the moment. Let's just to show you what I mean. We'll put Ukraine in the middle. We'll put, okay, there we go. You see, there's Ukraine's sun at 056 Virgo. Right now, Saturn is at 044 Pisces. So Saturn is coming up to Ukraine's sun. And there is Mars and Saturn at the beginning of a week, 27, 28 Scorpio, and they're just about to move into Sagittarius. And the moment they do that, they square Ukraine's sun and they square the Saturn. They trigger that Saturn. So I think that that Sun and Mars going into Sagittarius could be really bad for Ukraine. We may see some quite devastating news towards the end of the week about what's going on in terms of Ukraine's war. I mean, okay, we know Ukraine is losing, of course. Mainstream media in the West is sort of trying to keep up this fiction that there's a stalemate, but they are losing. And I think that maybe with this Sun and the Mars hitting Ukraine's Sun, it's going to create more problems. And we should not forget that NATO is heavily involved in this war. Here is NATO's horoscope. This is a chart for when NATO was ratified August the 24th, 1949. So it shares the same birthday as the Ukraine, different years. Ukraine's independence, August the 24th, 1991. NATO ratified August the 24th, 1949. So you can see that NATO has the Sun at 17 Virgo. So this week, Saturn is getting really close to the opposition of NATO's Sun, and then the Sun and Mars, as they move into Sagittarius, they square NATO's Sun, and they act as a trigger for that Saturn. So this brings together NATO and Ukraine, and it brings together Boris Johnson, because Boris Johnson has got his Mars at 1 degree Gemini, which is square NATO and Ukraine's Sun, and that also brings together Joe Biden's North Node, which is at 0 degrees Virgo, which is, of course, you've got the South Node at 0 degrees Pisces. So it brings everything together. So I think in terms of a lot of the actors involved in the war in Ukraine and keeping it going and people rooting for Ukraine, I mean, end of the week there could be an event which could be really quite difficult there. So other things, other people not necessarily directly connected to Ukraine. Mitch McConnell, I've talked about him recently. He has recently had health problems. He has got his Sun at 1 degrees Pisces. So we know that he's got transiting Saturn on his Sun. And so when Sun and Mars go into Sagittarius, they're going to be squaring his Sun. The Sun is the life force. By the way, this is a chart set for noon. I know it's got houses, but I don't know what time he was born. We don't know. We don't know, but he was born at noon. So the Sun, So he's got Saturn, already got Saturn conjunct his Sun. So Sun and Mars are going to come and hit his Sun as well. So Mitch McConnell really has to take it easily towards the end of the week. Mustn't do anything to stress himself. He needs to have a break from politics. There could be a problem there. Anyone else? Well, Russian opposition leader Alexei Navalny, who is in prison, who fell foul of the Russian regime for being overly critical of it, overly critical of Putin. He did that, didn't he? Had that. There was a YouTube video of him talking about Putin's palatial, his huge palace. Was it a palace? Was it on the Black Sea? It was just this massive building with just everything, and it looked a bit over the top. I think he probably upset Putin by saying that. But anyway, as we know, Navalny was almost killed in a nerve gas attack. And then he got treatment in Germany. Then he came back. He decided to come back to Russia anyway. He got arrested, and now he's still in prison. He has got his moon at 0.5 Virgo. So Saturn went retrograde almost to the opposition of his moon. Got to within less than half a degree of his moon, so it's now starting to move away from his moon. But now he's going to have, at the end of the week, he's going to have Sun and Mars square his moon. So I don't know what he should do. You can see he's got the moon in the 12th house, sort of in the 12th house. I mean, it's very close to the 12th house cusp, but I would see it as a 12th house moon. A 12th house, that's him in prison. And so, I don't know, it's probably not a time for him to be a hero. At the end of the week, he does need to, I don't know, just be careful. There are people, it would seem, who are trying to get him. Obviously, the government's trying to get him. I mean, he needs to look after himself, and the people around him need to make sure that he's properly protected. Perhaps at the end of the week, when the Sun and Mars are squaring his moon, and finally we have got Rishi Sunak, British Prime Minister. Who's just had this reshuffle. Things aren't looking too good for him. By reshuffle, he's reshuffled members of his cabinet. And so he has a Mars-Jupiter conjunction. His Jupiter is at 0.38 Virgo, close to Mars at 2.32 Virgo. So he's got Saturn opposition his Jupiter already. So his ability to come up with a program and a platform and to be optimistic is totally squelched by the Saturn opposition. And now at the end of this week, he's going to have Sun and Mars moving into Sagittarius and squaring his Jupiter. And worse still, into the week after, and the week starting, I suppose that would be the week starting in the 27th, Monday the 27th, will be going on to hit his Mars. So the Sun and Mars are going to be, at the end of this week, it's going to be causing him a lot of problems. I mean, if he thinks the reshuffle, getting rid of Suella Braverman, has solved anything, I don't think that's true. And I think events over the next week may confirm this. Of course, we may be looking at an event affecting lots of different people. Maybe something in Ukraine is going to affect Boris Johnson, it's going to affect Ukraine, it's going to affect NATO, it's going to affect Rishi Sunak, maybe even Mitch McConnell, I don't know. But I suspect not. I think each of these individuals will have their particular ways in which they are influenced and affected by the Sun and Mars moving into Sagittarius. Okay, having looked at a few charts, I now want to switch to the I Ching, and I'll be finishing with the I Ching. As usual, I ask the question, what is this week? That is the week starting Monday, November the 20th, running through to Sunday, November the 26th. What is it going to be like for people watching this video? And, I would remind you, if you are not interested, you don't really want to know what the I Ching says for you, then you can stop watching the video. This is only for people watching this video. Indeed, if you stop watching now, you are removing yourself from my forecast. You're not part of it. So I'm just telling you, you can just stop watching now if you want. I'm going to divide up my interpretation of I Ching in 4 ways. I'm just going to give a general reading. Then I'm going to look at money, then career, and finally I'm going to look at relationships. Okay, so the first hexagram I got was the cauldron. This is quite a powerful hexagram. It's about a change. It can be about bringing about a change of circumstances, a completely new way of doing things. With the symbolism of the cauldron is, you are burning something up. You have wood, and it's burning away. So, and the wood may, in a sense, represent something material which is being changed into something else. And so it's not a time to be, focusing entirely on the material world. Indeed, we may have to give something up in order to create the change that we're trying to, enact. So I think that's what we're trying to do. That's great. But there's one line moving. It's the 4th line moving. And unfortunately, it's telling us that we are not up to it. It's not enough to get promoted to a senior position. It's not enough to be given responsibility. We have to actually be able to do the job. And, if we are if we're trying to create this big change, if we're trying to create a completely new way of being, we need to have talent to do that. And we just don't have the talent. We don't have the ability. If we want to get other people to help us do it, the people we get to help us are not going to be up to it. They're just going to be, they might have wonderful resumes, but when it comes to actually doing it, they're just not. It's just going to be no good. So that is a problem with the cauldron, with that moving line. So it's not surprising that when we move to a different hexagram, that we get hexagram 18, illness. The Wilhelm translation actually calls this work on what has been spoilt, and relates it to sort of decay. But there is an optimistic angle to this, because there is a suggestion that we can do something about it. So, if we feel that we're just not competent, not able to do what we're trying to do, we should perhaps say, well, yeah, there's a problem. It may or may not be our fault, but we can fix the problem. So hence, illness is about a malady, but that can be cured. So we need to take steps to cure the problem. Then perhaps we have some chance of creating this big change that we've been really trying to do. But I think trying to do it quite unsuccessfully. And this I Ching for the week is taking place in a background where you've got where Mars and Saturn are in square. And as I was describing Mars and Saturn, this square, it's about frustration, it's about delay, it's about decay. It's just not being able to get things done, and those are the times we're in this week. But there is the chance there that we can cure the illness, that we can work on what has been spoilt, and we can resolve the thing. So that's what we've got to try and do. Now, as far as money is concerned, I think that if you're coming into this I Ching with a money issue, then I think there's a chance that you're in a situation where you certainly want to change your financial situation, but it doesn't seem to be possible, and you have to be particularly careful if you're planning on speculating, or worse still, gambling. So if you think that you can perhaps spend money or invest money to resolve a financial problem, well, that's okay, it might work out, but I think you have to consider the possibility that you don't really know what you're doing, or if you're looking for financial advice, then it's the same issue. A lot of people claim to be financial advisors, and they probably are. They might have the letters after their name, but if you trying to get financial advice this week, the people you are getting financial advice from are probably not up to the job, or they may be up to the job for other people, but as far as you're concerned, they're not up to the job. So whether you're getting professional financial advice or you're asking your friends and family what you should do about money, whoever you consult, then consider the possibility that these people don't know what they're talking about and can't really help you. And if they try to help you, and you listen to them, that could just make matters worse. But I should make it clear, this is just an opinion. This is just this video about the I Ching. It's for entertainment purposes only. You can take or leave it, what I say. But I'm not recommending that you take me too seriously. I have to say that. We're talking about money, important thing, but got to be careful there. But it's not so bad, because there is a moving hexagram. This hexagram does move to illness or work on what has been spoilt. It's suggesting, there's a financial problem, but is it a problem that can't be solved? No. It perhaps has to be solved by you. Can't. In the first instance, you have got to decide what has been done. There have been mistakes that have been made in the past, and now you've got to go back and sort those mistakes out. And in that way, you can start to make progress in terms of dealing with your finances. Okay, so now let's move to career and business. So the first hexagram is the cauldron, and so many of us are trying to make changes in our career, and if we own a business, we're trying to reform things. We're perhaps trying to create some kind of new order, and we may be quite excited about that. But there is a problem of competence. it may relate to our own competence. If we get a job this week or agree to do a piece of work, it may be the case that we're just not up to it. We may have persuaded someone that we're up to it. We may have persuaded someone that we can do it, but when it actually gets down to doing it, it may be a different matter. We may just not be able to get it together. So don't make claims, just for the sake of it. Yeah, you might get the job, but what happens then? You might embarrass yourself, or worse. Now, if you are running a business or you need to hire people for whatever business reasons you might need, or even you're getting advice or whatever, just consider the possibility that the people you hire may not be any good. In fact, if you're hiring anyone, I would suggest this week is not the week to do it, because there's a danger that you'll hire the wrong people. So bear that in mind. And if you're, again, like I was saying with money, if you're looking for any sort of business advice, everyone's got business advice, and if particularly, if someone wants to charge you for business advice, I'm sure they'll be quite happy to take your money, but that doesn't mean that they really understand your business, and that doesn't mean that they're able to give you good advice. So bear that in mind. But again, as I said, when I looking at the general situation with the I Ching and when I was looking at money, it's a problem that is not unsolvable, because the hexagram does move to illness, working on what has been spoilt. There's the possibility of a cure. So from a business career point of view, it's not that it's not really a time to be looking at some kind of wonderful new order. It's a time for sorting out the organic problems, maybe within yourself, or if you're running a business, in the business, maybe you're adopting the wrong strategy. Maybe you've got a knowledge problem, or you don't have the experience to do something. That's got to be resolved. Or it may be that you have the wrong idea about what kind of job you should be doing. In which case you've got to get to the bottom of the matter. And as I said, with 18, whether it's illness, however you want to describe it, illness, working on what has been spoilt. The I Ching is really saying that there is a way to resolve the matter. It's not like you're stuck in something. You can deal with a problem. Once you've dealt with a problem, then you can start addressing yourself to creating new possibilities in career and business. And finally, I want to look at relationships. I suppose it does depend what kind of relationships we're talking about. If you're in an existing relationship, there's certainly a feeling that something needs to change, but there's also a feeling that really making that change is just maybe not going to be possible right now. People people can say they're going to change, but people don't change really, do they? Well, maybe, but creating change, whether it's you that needs to change, whether it's your partner, spouse that needs to change, there perhaps is a need to change the nature of a relationship, but actually doing that right now is going to be difficult, if not impossible. And then that like with everything else with this I Ching reading, you would move to the hexagram 18, work on what has been spoilt, to say, well, actually, something needs to be resolved here. It's about you and your spouse, your partner, whatever, having to work on themselves so that you can even think about the change. So, firstly, one has to do the work. Then there is some possibility that you can make the transition. As far as new relationships are concerned, so if you're single, if you're looking for a new relationship, this week I wouldn't recommend it because, for one thing, you're not really in a good position to find the right person. And if you do find someone, then it's likely that they're just not going to be, I should say, properly qualified. You have your standards. And this person is not going to reach your standards. That's not going to happen. I mean, they might say they can, but whatever they're saying, it's not real. Or probably isn't real. You probably can't really trust them. So, yeah, in terms of relationships, it's not going to be a great week, but there is work to be done. Work on yourself. Asking what you need to do, whether you're in an existing relationship, what you need to address what is wrong with the existing relationship. If you're single, looking for a new relationship, again, there's work to be done. There's work on what you actually want. Maybe you don't really know what you want. Maybe you're focusing on the wrong things. But again, it's not a problem that can't be solved. Okay, so that's all I'm going to say for this week. Overall, looking at the astrology and the I Ching and sort of combining the whole thing, I think it's going to be quite a challenging and quite a frustrating week. But it's not going to last forever. The reason I was really thinking about the frustration here is because, when the Sun and Mars, move into Sagittarius, they make that square to Saturn. It's going to really, really make us feel that we just can't get anything done. But the Sun and Mars are quite fast-moving aspects. The Sun and Moon are fast-moving planets, so they'll move away from Saturn, and so next week, you should see a lot of these frustrations start to resolve. But going to the I Ching, whatever problems you've got, the I Ching is telling you that you can do something about it. You can address the problem. You can work on what has been spoilt, and once you've worked on what has been spoilt, you'll be in a position for creating sweeping and favourable change. Anyway, I hope you found my reading for this week, the week starting on November the 20th, helpful. And next week, the week starting on Monday the 27th, I will give you a new reading. And I will talk to you again very soon.